All right, welcome to yet another video in my Astrology Ascendant series. And today we're going to be talking about the Scorpio Ascendant. And what does it mean when a person has their ascendant, their rising sign, their first house, all of those things mean the same thing in the sign of Scorpio. Okay, so firstly, if this is the first video you've seen, what is an ascendant? Well, an ascendant sign is the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon at the time you were born, and through the ascendant sign, you can calculate your entire house system, and through your house system, you can calculate where certain areas of your life that correspond to certain houses how they're going to manifest in your life, or how they're very likely to manifest in your life, usually. So, for a Scorpio ascendant, their first house is, again, in the sign of Scorpio, and their first house always corresponds to Aries, which corresponds to your goals and personal ambitions, and Scorpio is a sign of deep research. So, if you are a Scorpio ascendant, your primary directive in life is to understand everything, which is why basically this ascendant, a lot of especially Vedic astrologers deem it as kind of cursed, because obviously one person can't know everything, or it's at least extraordinarily difficult to learn enough information to satisfy this demand. I would say Scorpio is probably the most demanding sign to have in your ascendant, because you have this constant anxiety and this constant pressure to research almost everything in life. And that's not just the good stuff. Like Sagittarius is the socially acceptable knowledge, remember, but Scorpio is every bit of information. That's why it's ruled by Mars, who's a soldier who goes into the unknown and conquers it. And Scorpio is the sort of soldier as researcher, soldier as tactician. And it wants to use not only that, because Aquarius wants to use all the information to be scientific and make their life better, but Scorpio wants to learn all the information and then apply it to other people, whereas Aquarius tends to apply their information to themselves in their own schedule. So this is a pretty challenging ascendant. So what are the other houses like? So the second house, which again corresponds to the energy of Taurus, which corresponds to material possessions, things that you like, pleasures, your clothes. The second house for them is Sagittarius, and as a result of this, these people don't really care about material things super like a whole lot. They care about primarily judging the content of belief systems, and they have an intuitive knack for basically spotting lies and spotting BS, because Sagittarius is a sign related to truth and preaching and teaching. So these people can look at a teacher pretty quickly and tell if they're full of crap or not. So they have a built-in way to judge information. These people's third house is Capricorn. So the third house is related to the sign of Gemini, and it's related to communication and speaking in small groups. And when these people are communicating with their friends, firstly, because their third house is Capricorn, these people they can have speech delays, and they can have speech impediments, or they can basically be very anxious about saying the right thing. But it's because the energy of Scorpio is so intense that they basically have all this information running through their head, and they're very careful about what they put out, because they know, firstly, that a lot of people can't handle the information, and it would be like dropping a book full of knowledge on an ant, in that it would crush the ant, it wouldn't educate them. And they know that their information, because it's outside of what most people experience, can be very damaging to people. For instance, the information about drugs, information about occult stuff. Most people, it can ruin their lives to learn things like that. Think about how many people get their life ruined by a psychedelic trip. So these people are very cautious with their words, and they're cautious with their writing, because they understand the power of their writing. So these people tend to, even though they know a lot from a young age, they tend to learn to be pretty quiet, and their ability to express themselves comes later in life, typically in their middle age years. All right, so the fourth house. Again, fourth house is what makes people emotionally comfortable and emotionally satisfied. And the Scorpio Ascendant's fourth house is Aquarius, meaning that these people, they get emotionally comforted by real useful information and things that they can know to be true that help their life in some way. So the more useful information they know, the more emotionally secure they feel. And because of this, it takes these people a very long time to be emotionally secure because they feel like they have to know everything in order to feel good. Similar to the Leo Ascendant having their fourth house in Scorpio, but slightly different because these people's goal is to learn as much information as possible. These people's fifth house is Pisces, so these people tend to dress in a very spiritual, creative way. They tend to wear pretty loose clothes that are non-restrictive, but they also tend to wear sort of spiritual clothes or just workout attire that sort of matches it helps them move. Like it's either functional clothing specifically or it's like spiritual clothing that these people wear. As far as their creative side, they create basically new philosophies, new spiritualities, new movements, new religions, that kind of thing. These people's sixth house, which represents enemies and routine, is Aries. So these people, because their sign of enemies is ruled by Mars, they tend to get a lot of enemies in their life, but it's typically okay because Aries is not like necessarily the most intelligent sign to have in your sixth house. So these people get a lot of enemies, but they tend to be able to outthink and outplan around their enemies pretty easily. And mostly their enemies come from people impulsively rejecting their ideas. So when they share some information that somebody doesn't like, they might get very cognitively dissonant and be annoying and try to pick a fight with them. Best thing to do to not get bad karma is just to walk away. Depending on where Mars is in this person's chart, depends on how they're going to deal with that inevitable cognitive dissonant reaction. So these people's seventh house is Taurus. And so Scorpio Ascendant people are, this is probably the one Scorpio sign where people are attracted to the materialistic energy in other people. Most people like Sun in Scorpio or Jupiter in Scorpio or Mercury in Scorpio are less materialistic, but if they have a Scorpio Ascendant and their seventh house is not debilitated and Venus is in an earth sign or like Venus may be in Cancer or Venus may be in an air sign, these people can be attracted toward materialistic partners simply for the fact that their lives tend to be very unstable. So if they're attracting a partner who's more stable and grounded and materialistic and lives a very simple, easy life, they can they can afford to do more research. So marriage kind of and partnerships for Scorpio Ascendants kind of become tactful from a financial perspective because it's very hard to make money and research new things at the same time. So these people's eighth house is Gemini. So eighth house represents research and Gemini represents communication. So these people are very intelligent in their research of new concepts, and they like talking about things that other people might not like talking about, like conspiracies, aliens, occult stuff, spiritual stuff. Everything basically interests them, so they'll talk about pretty much anything with anyone. Whether the people involved like that or not is going to be up to the sixth house and how cognitively dissonant they get. But they tend to have friends who are also interested in the things they're interested in because that's who they can relate to. These people's ninth house is Cancer, and since the ninth house is always ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, these people have a great capacity to learn useful information and to use that information in their home to make their lives better. So Jupiter in Cancer kind of becomes somebody who teaches their family the things they know and their beliefs, but don't be thinking that's necessarily such an easy thing to do because it puts a lot of demands on the family because, like, KRS, the astrologer on YouTube, put it really well when he said, like, imagine bringing, like, the most spiritual, like, guru Shaolin monk you can imagine into your home. Like, the teacher, professor, spiritual leader archetype into your house. Like, do you think he's going to let you have a bunch of alcohol? Do you think he's going to let you, like, get, like, fucked up and party? It's like, no, he's going to be strict, and he's going to tell you, hey, look, uh, like, I don't know where you thought you were, but, like, this is a spiritual leader's house. You're not going to be getting all fucked up here. Like, this, there's no point. So these people are very good at parents. They educate their children very well, but they are also quite intense because they know so much that, like, they want other people, especially the people they love, to know this too. So, like, if one of their friends starts getting into, like, bad behavior, they will tell them, like, hey, look, dude, like, you need to get your act together. And the other person might not like that, and they might break that relationship off. So this is a good energy, but it can also be very hard. Just because a planet is exalted doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have an easy time trying to do the right thing or its best possible self. Being its best possible self is not easy. So, either way. These people's 10th house is in Leo. So Leo, if Leo is the center, being the center of attention and being popular and being artistic and being admired and being on a stage, and 10th house is delays and anxiety, these people, they spend so much of their time researching that being popular and being the center of attention comes quite late. Eventually they do get this, but it takes time for people to begin to appreciate their perspective, because if they're trying to figure everything out, you don't necessarily have time to be superficial about being the center of attention. But eventually people do notice that, like, oh yeah, this guy knows a lot of stuff, he's worth having on our show. You can see, like, somebody like Rupert Sheldrake, who's a Scorpio Ascendant, getting, he gets his book published when he's like 50, and then he gets to, like, parade around the country doing all these talks and, like, his science delusion talks and, like, having a really good time by basically just uprooting the foundation of Western science and in becoming very well received for it. So this is actually a good placement, even though in the early life it can feel like nobody appreciates you because you're telling them things they don't want to know. These people's 11th house is Virgo, and as a result of that, 11th house is gains in scientific information, and these people are very good at analyzing information. They're very scientific about their analysis, because remember, 11th house is ruled by Aquarius, and Aquarius is the higher self of Virgo. So having Virgo in Aquarius's house makes these people very scientific, very analytical, and very good at judging good information from bad information. Like I said, with the second house, Sagittarius, they sort of have a built-in lie detector, and they're very good at telling when somebody's being, like, it's hard to get a lie past these people. And then these people's 12th house is Libra. So with Libra being their 12th house is spirituality, 12th house is being in isolation, and having Libra in the 12th house is an interesting position because Libra is dealing with other people, one-on-one conversations, and basically these people can be, this is kind of where the promiscuity of Scorpio comes in, because if Libra is in the mutable water sign of a house of Pisces or the 12th house, these people can be extraordinarily promiscuous, and they can sort of not take relationships super seriously and sort of take them as, like, I want to be in a relationship with you so that I can learn and research you, basically. So because 12th house is also observing new phenomenon, like observing natural phenomenon. So if these people have their relationships in that, they're going to be sort of like researching their partner and, like, treating their partner like, you're really interesting. Tell me more about yourself. And then also since 12th house is also sex, these people meet people for the purpose of engaging in their sexual fantasies, but then they can also have an issue with seeing the person as something like that's actually a person, and not just like sort of analyzing them and being interested in them, and like sort of treating them like a vehicle to accomplish their fantasies. So this is probably one of the harder parts of being a Scorpio ascendant, is that you treat people like your own personal fantasy fulfillment, or you just start marveling at how complicated they are because you're seeing all the parts of them that they don't even necessarily see. So that is my video on being a Scorpio ascendant and what happens if somebody has a Scorpio ascendant. So, yeah, next time it'll be Sagittarius ascendant. So check that out.